Ugly girl wore a paper bag over her head every day to go to the village to hide her face, until she's shocked. "He's not breathing," one of the nurses screamed, dropping her stethoscope as she backed away, eyes wide with fear. The cry echoed down the hallway of the small hospital in Enugu. It was still dark when Amarachi came into the world, but there was no joyful weeping or celebratory cheers. One by one, the delivery room staff collapsed like dry leaves in the wind. Doctors, midwives, even a janitor just passing through to collect linens, all fell to the ground without a wound, without a sound. They simply stopped. Standing beside the hospital bed, Emeka held his wife Nkechi's hand, still breathless after the labor. He looked around, confused. Muffled screams from distant corridors suddenly went silent. The newborn's bassinet was empty, and the cry that filled the room was not sweet. It was intense, almost suffocating. "What's happening?" Nkechi asked, tugging on Emeka's sleeve, her eyes brimming with tears. "Where is everyone?" A heavy silence fell over the hospital. Only the baby's cry could be heard. When Emeka stepped closer to the crib to see his newborn daughter, his eyes filled with tears, not of joy but of astonishment. Amarachi was beautiful. Not ordinary beauty. There was something sacred about her, impossible to explain. Her features looked as though they'd been sketched by celestial hands. "She's too beautiful," he whispered, breathless. Nkechi tried to sit up to see her daughter, but hesitated. She looked at the bodies on the floor, then back at her husband. "Emeka, why are we the only ones still alive?" He had no answer. He brought the baby to her, still wrapped in the white birthing cloth. As he approached, the baby's crying stopped. A strange warmth filled the air, as if the girl's presence commanded reverence from the very atmosphere. It was only when the village prophet, an old man named Baba Chidi, arrived at the hospital, called in by a surviving nurse, that part of the mystery began to unfold. "This child," he said in a deep voice, walking among the bodies on the floor without hesitation. "This girl carries something beyond what the eyes can see, a beauty that is not human, a gift or a curse." No one replied. The parents, bewildered, simply watched. "Her fate will be heavy," the prophet continued. "But one day this burden will be broken, when someone truly loves her, not for her looks, not for gain, but with a pure heart. Only then will the curse be lifted." The old man left the room, leaving behind silence and more questions. And over time, the parents came to understand the weight of his words. Years passed. Amarachi grew up in a modest home on the edge of the village, kept away from school, other children, even the windows. Her mother taught her the alphabet, numbers, the names of animals, and old folk tales from their land. Her father brought her used books from the market, maps, science magazines, anything to keep her mind bright. But they never allowed her to remove the cloth from her face. After the first two accidents, when a cousin and a neighbor walked in unexpectedly and saw her face and died without explanation, her parents started using a sturdy paper bag, fitted with small holes for her eyes. It was a special bag, reinforced with folded layers and lined inside with soft fabric. Her mother hand-painted it to try and make it more beautiful, less frightening. Even so, Amarachi grew up believing she was a monster. "Mum, why can't anyone see me?" she used to ask as a child, touching her hidden face. "Because the world isn't ready for what you carry, my daughter. But one day, someone will see all of you, and they'll survive, and they'll love you." Those words became a prayer repeated throughout her childhood. And even without playing in the street, going to village parties, or having real friends, Amarachi learned to endure, to live with solitude. By 12, she was solving physics problems Emeka didn't understand. By 14, she was reading romance and philosophy on her own. By 16, she had completed all the equivalent high school exams with perfect scores. Still, her only companions were the sounds of neighborhood radios and children playing outside. Every time someone knocked on the door unannounced, her mother would rush to cover Amarachi's head with a blanket. The house had no mirrors, no hanging portraits. No visitor stayed longer than 5 minutes. "Better to live hidden than to cause death by accident," Papa Emeka would say, sadness in his eyes. But Amarachi dreamed. She dreamed of seeing the world with her own eyes, going to college, walking through the market. shopping like any other person. "Do you think I'll ever walk outside without this on my head?" she asked one night, looking at the bag hanging in the corner of her room. The candle flickered beside her bed. Her mother didn't answer. She just stroked her daughter's hair and kissed her covered forehead. It wasn't until she turned 18 that the final conversation happened. "Amarachi," her father said, sitting at the table with a folded sheet of paper in his hand. "You've been accepted to the University of Nsuka, full scholarship. Your score was the highest in the state." The girl froze. Her eyes behind the holes in the bag lit up. I can really go?" "You can, daughter, but you'll still protect others. You'll keep the cover. You understand, don't you?" She nodded, heart racing. On the day of her departure, the village watched her walk through with the same bag over her face, a simple dress and a backpack on her shoulders. Murmurs spread. Some whispered, "Who is that girl with her head covered?" Others simply looked away. She passed through the market, crossed the wooden bridge and boarded the bus toward her future. They didn't know that the ugly girl with a bag on her head carried a face the world would never forget. But for now it remained hidden, to keep everyone else alive. "Hey, who's that with the paper bag on her head?" one of the students asked, discreetly pointing with his chin. Amarachi had just stepped off the bus at the bustling entrance of the University of Nsuka. Heat, car horns, dragging backpacks and street vendors, everything seemed to shout welcome to the real world. But she didn't see faces. She kept her eyes alert behind the two carefully cut holes in the bag covering her head. She wore a modest blouse, a knee-length skirt, and walked with steady steps even though her heart trembled inside. Every sound, every distant laugh felt like it was about her. And often it was. "Look at that, guys," a sophomore whispered. "A flower bag, mummy, that's horrifying." The sound of muffled laughter spread like wildfire. Of course, Amarachi heard it, but she didn't look away. She kept walking. Her goal was simple: find the registration office, submit her documents, and head to the dormitory. While waiting in line at the admin office, students whispered behind her. One even tried to sneak a photo, but before the camera could click, she turned sharply. "Delete it now," she said in a firm, low voice. The boy, surprised by her unexpected boldness, deleted it without protest. In those first days, Amarachi became an enigma on campus. She didn't speak to anyone, always sat in the front row, finished exams before everyone else, and turned in flawless essays. Professors adored her, even though none had ever seen her face. But the students, not so much. "I bet she's covered in scars, or burns," a group said near the cafeteria. "Or maybe she's a criminal in disguise," another laughed. The rumors spread quickly, but none were as persistent or poisonous as those started by Ngozi, the most popular girl on campus, known for her straightened hair, expensive clothes, and loud laughter. Daughter of a powerful trader from Onitsha, Ngozi had always believed the world revolved around her. And when she noticed that Amarachi, the girl with the bag, was drawing attention effortlessly, jealousy was born. "Who does she think she is, hiding like that?" she asked in a theatrical tone, surrounded by her followers. "Does she think she's better than us?" "Maybe she thinks she's special," one of her friends replied, laughing. "Well, I'm going to find out who's behind that bag," Ngozi declared, crossing her arms. "This is a university, not a haunted house." Still, Amarachi ignored the provocations. She spent her days buried in her studies. Chemistry, literature, African philosophy. She mastered it all. Her focus was unshakable, but that only fueled Ngozi's fury. In the library, in the halls between classes, the harassment escalated. One day, while Amarachi waited alone for a class to begin, Ngozi entered with a group of friends and approached dramatically. "Hey, Miss Rice Sack," she said loudly, for everyone to hear. "We just want to know, are you too ugly or are you hiding something?" Some laughed, others looked on uncomfortably. Amarachi didn't respond. She kept her eyes on the study guide in her hands. "Oh, so you're pretending we're not talking to you?" Ngozi continued, leaning in closer. "Come on, show us a little peek. Maybe we won't die of shock." Amarachi took a deep breath and slowly lifted her gaze. "You don't want to see what's under this," she said calmly. "Of course I do, we all do. Or is there some curse under there? She teased, laughing at her own sarcasm. Yes, Amarachi replied seriously. A curse that could kill you. The laughter paused for a second. Ngozi stepped back slightly, surprised by the weight of the response, but she quickly slipped back into sarcasm. What a drama! What book did you get that from? I thought you were smart. The bell rang and the crowd dispersed, but that day's confrontation was just the beginning. In the following weeks, Ngozi's attacks became daily, sometimes subtle, sometimes public. She even wrote on one of the campus bulletin boards, "Warning, the killer in the bag walks among us." Despite it all, Amarachi held her dignity. She endured. She knew what she carried. She knew the risk of reacting. One night, arriving at her room in the girls' dormitory, she dropped her backpack on the floor and sat on her bed. Her roommate, who preferred to stay uninvolved, watched from a distance. Amarachi took a deep breath, opened her notebook, and began to write. But instead of formulas or summaries, she wrote something different. No matter what they say, I cannot let them see. Even if it hurts, even if they scream, I am responsible for every life on this campus. If a face can kill, it's better they think I'm ugly than see the truth and die. She folded the paper and placed it inside the Bible her mother had given her. Then she turned off the light. She fell asleep to the sound of other students laughing outside. They were laughing at her, but they were alive, and that's what mattered most. "Tunde, come here for a minute," called Ngozi, crossing her legs with forced elegance as she adjusted her sunglasses on top of her head. The tall, charming young man, with an easy smile and lazy walk, stopped in the middle of the university courtyard. He was surrounded by classmates laughing at some joke, but when he heard Ngozi's voice, his expression turned slightly impatient. "What is it now, Ngozi? Another one of your brilliant ideas?" "This one's the best yet," she said, clapping her hands lightly, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "You know that weird girl with the bag over her head, right? Amarachi." Tunde shrugged, pretending not to care. "I've seen her around. The girl with the paper bag. Always alone, always quiet." "Exactly," said Ngozi, smiling with her lips but not her eyes. "You're going to get close to her. Pretend you're interested. Be her friend. Maybe even more." "What kind of game are you playing now?" he asked, eyebrows furrowed. "Simple. Once she trusts you, you get into her room, wait until she's asleep and take the bag off. Just one photo. Just one. Then send it to me." Tunde pressed his lips together. "That's a violation, Ngozi. Even you can't force someone to show their face like that." "Force?" she laughed. "You just be helping us all understand who we're dealing with. The girl's hiding something, and I have the right to show it. Don't tell me you're not curious." Tunde hesitated. Part of him was curious. Another part knew it was wrong, but Ngozi knew how to manipulate. She touched his shoulder, leaned in, and whispered, "If you do this, I owe you one. You know my family can open doors, internships, connections." It was the kind of promise that got under Tunde's skin. After a few seconds, he nodded. "Fine, but I'll do it my way. No rush." The next day, Amarachi was finishing her biochemistry notes when someone sat beside her. It wasn't common. Almost no one sat near her. "Amarachi, right?" Tunde asked with a casual smile. She looked up slowly. She could only make out his silhouette through the small holes in the bag. "Yes," she replied curtly. "I'm Tunde. I've seen you in class. You're really smart. I like the way you answer Professor Onwudiwe's questions." She didn't respond right away. She was used to insults disguised as compliments, but his tone sounded sincere. Still, she was cautious. "Thank you." Tunde smiled wider, as if he had broken through a barrier. "If you ever want someone to study with, I'm around. Or to distract you. Who knows?" he joked. She didn't laugh, but something in her posture eased a little. In the following days, Tunde approached gradually. He sat near her in lectures, asked questions about assignments, complimented her notes. He brought her water, snacks, juice. Always kind, always helpful. "Why are you trying to be my friend?" she asked one afternoon in the library. Tunde pretended to be surprised. "Why not? You're smart, calm, you're not caught up in all the gossip and drama." No one wants to be friends with someone who walks around with a paper bag on their head. I don't care about that, he said. The truth is, you intrigue me. Everyone talks, but no one actually knows you. I want to. Amarachi didn't know how to answer. For the first time since arriving, someone treated her like a person, not a freak. She began to open up. She talked about the books she liked, her fascination with stars and organic chemistry. She told him she loved walking through the courtyard late at night when everyone else was asleep, just to breathe the open air. Tunde listened patiently, even though inside he felt more conflicted with every word she spoke. Each thing she shared made Ngozi's plan feel more disgusting, but he'd already promised, and Ngozi would hold him to it. 2 weeks later, he suggested they study together in the girls' dorm. I can't focus in my room. My roommates are always loud, he said, with a face full of mock regret. But if you let me come to yours, I'll bring chin-chin and soda. Amarachi hesitated, took a deep breath. Her instinct screamed no, but the voice of loneliness whispered, yes. Okay, but just to go over notes. That night she prepared the room. She put away all mirrors, covered the lamp with a scarf to soften the light, cleaned the floor, boiled water for tea. Tunde arrived with a smile and a small bag of pastries. Can't study on an empty stomach. She smiled behind the bag. She poured 2 cups of tea. But while Amarachi turned her back to get a notebook, Tunde pulled a tiny envelope from his pocket. He emptied the contents into her cup. Here you go, he said, hands trembling. She thanked him and drank without suspicion. They chatted for a few more minutes, but soon Amarachi's eyes began to grow heavy. I think I'm getting sleepy, she murmured, leaning into her pillow. You deserve some rest, Tunde replied. He waited. Once her movement stopped, he crept closer. The guilt weighed heavier than his own body. I'm sorry, Amarachi. With nervous fingers, he began to untie the knots of the paper bag, one by one. Each loosened thread made his heart pound harder. When the last fold fell and her face appeared in the dim light, Tunde froze. There were no words. Her beauty wasn't just physical. It was a force, a presence, a supernatural glow that seemed to bend the air itself. His eyes widened. He tried to step back, but his body wouldn't move. His heartbeat turned erratic. His chest locked. Within seconds, he dropped to his knees. Then to the floor. Silent, eyes open, lifeless. On the bed, Amarachi breathed heavily, still drowsy, but something felt wrong. She noticed the absence of sound, a strange emptiness. She stirred awake slowly, saw the spilled cup, the bag beside the bed, and Tunde on the floor. Tunde, she whispered, crawling toward him. Tunde, what did you do? She shook him, begged, but he was dead, like the others. As always, she cried like never before, pressed his face to her chest and whispered, I warned you. Why does no one ever listen? Is anyone there? Shouted a voice from the hallway. The knock on the door echoed through the wall as Amarachi crouched beside Tunde's motionless body, still unable to fully grasp what had just happened. Her hands trembled. Her eyes stared into nothing. Help! Another voice cried out. There's a guy passed out in here. The door burst open. 2 students, drawn by the eerie silence and Tunde's absence from the men's dorm, barged into the room. One of them saw the body and let out a high-pitched scream. The other ran down the corridor, calling security. Amarachi didn't move. She was still on her knees, eyes swollen with tears, the torn paper bag lying beside the bed. Her breathing was shallow, fragile. Within minutes, the dorm was filled with voices, hurried footsteps and distant sirens. The police arrived shortly after. 2 officers stepped inside, surveyed the scene, and exchanged looks. Who is she? One of them asked. Amarachi Okiki, chemistry major. She always wears a paper bag on her head, answered a hesitant dormmate. Everyone's heard of her. And the boy? The other officer asked. That's Tunde Obi, economics student. The officers approached carefully. One of them knelt to examine Tunde's body. No signs of struggle, no wounds, dilated pupils, no response. Looks like sudden death. But we can't know for sure until the autopsy. The officer turned to Amarachi, still sitting on the floor, her eyes red and vacant. "Miss Amarachi, what happened here?" It took her a few seconds to respond. Her voice was barely a whisper. "He saw my face. That's all." Silence. "What do you mean? Are you saying he died just from seeing your face?" She nodded. "I warned him. I always warn them. But no one believes me." The officers exchanged glances again. One stepped out to make a phone call. The other remained in the room, watching Amarachi closely, as if expecting some violent outburst. But she only bowed her head and cried in silence. Hours later, at the station, she told the same story. She explained how Tunda had approached her, pretended to be her friend, came to her room, gave her tea. She told them about the others, about the day she was born, about what happened at the hospital. "There's no sign of poisoning or trauma, nothing," the medical examiner told the chief later. "The body is completely clean. It's like his heart just stopped." After hearing from her parents, rushed to the city by emergency call, the police made a difficult decision. There was no evidence of a crime, no weapon, no apparent motive, no physical action that could explain the death. "She carries something," the chief said quietly after the interrogation. "She's not a killer, but she's not ordinary either." Just before dawn, Amarachi was released. Mama Nkechi and Papa Emeka were waiting outside the station. She ran into her mother's arms and cried without shame. "He saw Mama, and he died, another one." Her mother held her tightly, stroking her back with tenderness. "You're not to blame, Amarachi. You never were." That same morning, once home, she sat on a chair in the living room and took the torn paper bag from her bag. She stared at it for a long time before placing it back over her head. "Maybe I should stop trying, stop going out, stop studying, stop speaking, and live like a prisoner for the rest of your life?" Papa Emeka asked seriously. "Daughter, you didn't ask for this. You didn't do anything, but hiding isn't the same as living." "You don't understand," Amarachi shouted, tears rising again. "I carry death on my face. They laughed at me, mocked me, and now he's dead, because he thought I was just a shy girl." Mama Nkechi knelt in front of her daughter. "Amarachi, I do understand. We've lived with this since the day you were born. But you have to be strong. You can't stop now. You've come so far. But how do I keep going knowing one mistake could kill someone? By being careful, by focusing on what brought you this far. Your knowledge, your mind, your strength. You're not alone." Those words echoed in the silence of the small room. Amarachi didn't reply, but she didn't take off the bag again either. Days later, she returned to campus. She walked the halls in silence, ignoring the even more intense stares. The whispers, the covered mouths, the mocking smiles. Now everyone knew Tundi had died in her room, and although the police didn't see her as guilty, the students had their own conclusions. It was in the central courtyard, near the admin block, that she saw Ngozi approaching with firm steps and venom in her eyes. "The killer's back," she shouted dramatically. "What happened? Your parents pay off the cops?" Students nearby stopped to watch. Amarachi stopped too. "You're a monster. Everyone here knows it. Still hiding behind that bag? Planning to kill us too?" Amarachi took a deep breath. Her eyes behind the holes in the bag stared at Ngozi coldly. "You don't know anything. I know you're a coward. So ugly you have to live in hiding. And you? So empty you have to tear others down just to feel alive?" The words cut like a blade. Ngozi hadn't expected a comeback. She stood silent for a second, stunned. But then she laughed again, like nothing had happened. "This isn't over, Amarachi. You think you've won, but I'll still unmask you, and no one will protect you." Amarachi turned and walked away, not running, not afraid, just refusing to give someone so small the last word. The pain still pulsed in her chest, the guilt still weighed on her shoulders. But deep down she knew this moment, this loss, had brought a kind of clarity. She could no longer trust any act of kindness, and now more than ever, she would have to be strong for herself. Because now the entire university didn't just see her as the girl with the bag, they saw her as a threat, and that changed everything. "Look, there she is again," murmured a voice near the cafeteria. Amarachi walked across the university courtyard with the same quiet steps as always, the paper bag carefully fitted over her head, her eyes hidden behind the two small holes. Since Tunde's death, the stares hadn't stopped. Worse, they were now filled with fear. Some students stepped away when they saw her. Others whispered as if her presence polluted the air. But she didn't change her path. She kept walking, even with her chest tight and her stomach heavy with anxiety. That's when she heard hurried footsteps behind her. "Hey, you!" called a voice she recognized without needing to look. "Ngozi!" She turned slowly. Ngozi approached, flanked by 3 friends. Her heels struck the pavement with fury, her arms swung with theatrical exaggeration. "Don't think just because the police let you go you're some kind of saint now," she snapped, stopping less than a meter from Amarachi. "Everyone here knows what you are." Amarachi said nothing. "You killed Tunde, and no one's going to forget that. You can hide behind that bag all you want, but one day it'll fall. And what then, gonna kill someone else?" The other girls chuckled under their breath. Amarachi crossed her arms. She was tired. Tired of running, of staying silent, of accepting. "And what about you?" she replied, voice low but steady. "How long have you been pretending to be someone you're not?" Ngozi blinked, surprised. "What did you say?" "Everyone's heard the stories. You cozy up to professors hoping for grades in exchange for favors. Always talking about money, but your parents live in a mud house in Nkanu." "Shut up!" Ngozi shouted, her face flushed red. "You think you're better than everyone because you wear fake hair and expensive clothes, but you live off sugar daddies you hide in your phone messages." The students nearby froze. The courtyard went silent. Only the wind could be heard. "You want to expose people, Ngozi? Then get ready to be exposed too." Ngozi tried to laugh, but no sound came out. Her face, drained of color, made it clear Amarachi had hit where it hurt. "You think hiding means the world can't touch you, but don't be fooled. The day that bag comes off, no one's going to protect you." Amarachi stepped forward. "And the day someone really looks at you, Ngozi, what will they see? A sad, lonely girl begging for attention? Or just a hollow shadow trying to dim other people's light?" The words dropped like a hammer. Someone laughed. Another said, "Say it again." "Go, Amarachi!" shouted a student from the back. Ngozi stepped back. She looked around for support, but her friends stayed quiet, avoiding her gaze. She turned and walked off, her steps hurried, trying to hide the tears. Amarachi took a deep breath. Her body still trembled, but something new stirred inside her, lightness. For the first time, she had faced Ngozi head-on. For the first time, her voice had been heard. That night in the dorm, sitting at her study desk, Amarachi looked at her mother's Bible. She pulled out the folded paper she'd kept inside, the same one where, weeks earlier, she had written that no one could ever see her face. She read it slowly, thinking about everything she had faced. She wasn't the same girl who had arrived at the university filled with fear. She still carried the curse, yes, but now she carried courage too. A week later, during African history class, the professor made an announcement. "We have a new transfer student. He just arrived yesterday from Abuja. Obina Nwoke. Please make him feel welcome." Everyone turned at once. Obina entered the room with calm steps, a backpack slung over one shoulder, and a soft smile on his face. He was tall, dark-skinned, with eyes that seemed to observe the world carefully. The girls started whispering. "Wow, he's gorgeous," one said. "He looks like an actor from a Nollywood movie," another added. Amarachi, as always, didn't react. She just lowered her gaze and kept writing. But something about his name, about that calm voice, stayed with her. After class, while she organized her books, Obina walked past and said, "Nice work in the discussion today. Your points were really well put." She simply nodded. Obina didn't ask why she wore the bag. He didn't laugh or look at her with pity. He just spoke with ease, and that touched her. Elsewhere on campus, Ngozi watched from a distance. "He's mine," she whispered to herself. The next day, she armed herself with her tightest dress, red lipstick, and French perfume. She spotted Obina sitting in the garden near the library and walked toward him with a rehearsed stride. "Hi, newbie," she said sweetly. Want some company while you get to know the campus? Obinna glanced at her briefly. No, thanks. I prefer walking alone. Ngozi froze. I'm Ngozi. You'll see me around. Everybody knows me. Is that so? I prefer to get to know people myself. He turned back to the book in his hands. Ngozi stood there for a moment, speechless, then walked away, heels pounding as if the ground itself had betrayed her. Later that day, Amarachi was sitting under her favorite tree near the chemistry building when she heard soft footsteps behind her. Mind if I sit here? It was Obinna. It's public space, she replied quietly. He sat down, not pushing for conversation. They stayed there in silence for a few minutes. I like quiet places, he said eventually. Do you come here often? Whenever I can. It's the only place where no one whispers. I don't whisper, he said, smiling. She turned her head slightly toward him, though still not revealing her face. Something in his calm demeanor soothed her. Why do you want to talk to me? Because you seem like a good person. Amarachi stayed silent, letting those words sink in. Obinna, I carry something you don't understand. It's not safe to be near me. He smiled again. I carry my own scars. Not all of them show, but still. I like meeting people who truly live. For the first time in a long time, she smiled on the inside. Not with her lips, but with her heart. And in that moment, without yet knowing how much it would change everything, Amarachi felt one thing with certainty. Obinna is so stubborn, muttered Ngozi, watching from a distance as he and Amarachi walked out of the library together. Her painted nails scratched the arm of the plastic chair where she sat with two friends who already looked tired of the topic. Ever since Obinna had rejected her, Ngozi had become obsessed with tracking his every move, where he went, who he talked to, what he ate. And now her worst nightmare was unfolding. Obinna, the most sought-after guy on campus, was getting close to Amarachi, the girl she hated the most. He must be blind, she grumbled. Has to be. Maybe he's just into her intelligence, one of her friends offered hesitantly. Intelligence, Ngozi stood abruptly. He needs a woman, not a teacher. Meanwhile, Amarachi and Obinna walked side by side toward the physics building. The late afternoon sun bathed the trees on campus in golden light. So your favorite author is Chimamanda? Obinna asked, balancing a few books in his arms. Because of how she writes about identity, belonging. Yes, Amarachi replied. I like that. You speak with conviction. She smiled behind the bag. She still wasn't sure if she could fully trust Obinna, but with each conversation, each shared word, she felt lighter. He never pressed about her face, never asked invasive questions. He just treated her like an equal. And you, what do you like? Literature, physics, and people brave enough to be different. She paused, looked at him, though he couldn't see her eyes. Why are you really doing this? Doing what? Being my friend. You know what people say about me. Obinna stopped too, took a deep breath. I don't believe everything people say. And even if some of it were true, you don't seem like a threat. You seem sincere. Amarachi turned her face away, even though it was already hidden. A strange emotion began to swell inside her. Days passed and the two became inseparable. They studied together, shared snacks, exchanged notebooks. Sometimes Amarachi laughed quietly at Obinna's witty comments, and he, in turn, seemed more and more enchanted by her. But outside the little world they'd built, tension brewed. Students watched their growing bond with suspicion. Whispered comments spread. How can he stand that mask? Must be some weird fetish, or she's got him under a spell. Of course, all of this reached Ngozi's ears, and it only made her more bitter, until one afternoon she lost control. Amarachi was sitting beneath the same tree where she always studied. Obinna hadn't arrived yet. Ngozi appeared suddenly, flanked by 3 other girls. Her steps were sharp, her eyes burning. Look who it is, she said loudly. The campus witch. Amarachi lifted her eyes slowly. Need something, Ngozi? I do. I want you to stay away from what's not yours. I haven't taken anything. Don't play dumb. You're bewitching Obinna. He was supposed to be mine. Amarachi let out a short laugh. Obina isn't anyone's property. If you couldn't win him over, maybe the problem isn't me. You'll pay for this, Ngozi shouted, stomping her foot. I know what you are. Everyone does. You're a freak, a monster who hides because you kill anyone who sees. The yelling drew a crowd. Students began to gather. Some were already recording with their phones. And you're a joke, Amarachi shot back, now on her feet. Always pretending to be something you're not, just to hold on to a status no one respects anymore. Shut up, Ngozi yelled, stepping forward. Or what, gonna scream louder, tell another lie? You're stealing the only decent man this campus has seen. I didn't steal anything. Obina came close because he respects me. Something you've never known how to do with anyone, including yourself. The crowd fell silent. Ngozi's face flushed. She had lost again. Later that day, Obina found Amarachi alone in the chemistry lab. She said nothing, just kept cleaning glassware. I saw what happened, he said. I didn't want to fight, but she pushed too far. You did the right thing, and Ngozi needed to hear that. She hesitated, then looked up at him. Obina, why aren't you afraid of me? He stepped closer. Because I see you, even without seeing your face. And if you did see it? That wouldn't change anything, because what matters to me is here. He touched his chest. And here. Then he pointed to his head. Not what's hidden. Amarachi felt her eyes fill with tears. Something inside her wanted to open up, but it still wasn't time. You're different, she whispered. Maybe that's why we get along. She laughed softly, for the first time without fear. And there, between test tubes and open books, something new was born. Something not even Ngozi's fury could destroy, like the others. Amarachi, I need to tell you something. Obina's voice was gentle, but it carried a firmness that made her heart beat faster. The sky over Nsuka that afternoon was overcast, and the shadows from the trees wrapped them in a comforting silence. Sitting on a stone bench near the university's botanical garden, Amarachi felt the air grow heavier, as if time itself were about to shift. She turned her face slightly toward him. Even behind the paper bag, her eyes were attentive, expectant. Go ahead, she said. Obina took a deep breath. I like you, Amarachi. I mean it. Not just as a friend. Not just as a study partner. I like you as you are. With the bag, without it. With fear or without. The world around her seemed to stop. No leaves rustled. No street noise. No distant laughter. Just that sentence floating in the air. She took a moment to respond. You don't even know who I am. You haven't seen my face. I don't need to. I see your soul. I see your strength, your kindness, your intelligence. And honestly, that's what matters to me. Amarachi lowered her head. A knot formed in her throat. You say that now, but what if one day you see what's under here? What if it's too much? What if you can't handle it? Obina didn't hesitate. Then let me see. She looked at him, shocked. What? Let me see. If you trust me, if you think I'm ready, show me what everyone's afraid to look at. Silence returned, thick, heavy, almost sacred. Amarachi stood up from the bench. You don't understand. I've lost people, good people. They saw me and they just died. I know. I've heard the stories, but I'm not them. She turned her back, her body was trembling. And what if you are? What if you're just another body on the floor, Obina? Then so be it, he said, stepping closer. But if I survive, you'll know it's over. The curse is broken. You're free. She slowly turned around. A profound stillness filled the space. You really want to do this? I do. I trust you. She hesitated. Her fingers shook as they reached for the knot in the paper bag. Every movement was a battle against the fear she had lived with since birth. She untied the first knot, then the second. The paper slid slowly down her face, revealing smooth brown skin, eyes that sparkled like the full moon, trembling lips. Obina froze. He looked at her completely. Her beauty was indescribable. It wasn't just physical. There was a supernatural pull to it, an energy that touched something deep inside him. Amarachi stepped back. Obinna, are you okay? He didn't respond right away. He felt a tingling in his chest as if something inside him wanted to burst, not pain, but emotion, shock, wonder. You are, he whispered, absolutely beautiful. Her eyes widened in disbelief. You're alive. He smiled. I am. And more than that, I'm in love. Amarachi covered her face with her hands, tears rushing in uncontrollably. For the first time, someone had seen her face and was still standing. She threw her arms around him, sobbing, as if the touch confirmed he was real. Obinna held her tightly, tenderly, with reverence. That night he took her to his place. He cooked a simple, warm dinner. They talked for hours, laughed, shared childhood memories, pain and fears. Before saying goodbye, Obinna looked into her eyes and said, "You're not a curse. You're a miracle." Back at the dorm, Amarachi entered silently. She closed the door behind her, slid down to the floor and sat smiling through her tears. The next morning, when she arrived home, Mama Nkechi was in the kitchen. "Mom," she said, her voice breaking, "I need to tell you something." Her mother dropped the wooden spoon and turned around. "What is it, my child?" "He saw my face. Obinna saw me. And he's alive." Her mother froze. Her eyes welled up with tears. "He's alive? And he said he loves me." She brought her hands to her mouth, sat down, cried, "Hallelujah, hallelujah," she repeated, sobbing. "The Lord heard our prayers. The prophecy has been fulfilled." Amarachi knelt beside her and hugged her tightly. "Mom, I think the curse is broken." "It is, my daughter. You found someone who truly loves you, who saw you and chose you." At that moment, Amarachi understood something she had carried in her heart since the day she was born. Her face had never been the danger. It was the fear, the absence of true love, the lack of someone willing to see beyond the surface. Now everything would change. She was ready for the world, ready to live without fear, to be herself fully, and to love, with her face uncovered, her heart wide open, and no longer carrying the weight of something that was never her fault. "She's not wearing the bag," a sharp voice shrieked from the middle of the university's central courtyard. Every head turned at once. Conversations stopped, backpacks froze mid-shift on shoulders. The sound of flip-flops on the cement floor hung in the air like an ancient echo. Amarachi walked forward with calm steps. For the first time since arriving on campus, her face was uncovered. Her brown skin, her intense eyes, her serene and confident expression. She looked almost ethereal under the morning sun. Whispers rippled outward like waves. "Oh my God, is that her? What kind of face is that? I thought she was ugly. I thought she was cursed." Amarachi kept walking. Her backpack hung from her right shoulder. Her navy blue dress swayed gently. She looked straight ahead, ignoring the phones being raised, the hidden cameras, the nervous laughter. From the far end of the courtyard, the cafeteria doors burst open. Ngozi emerged, pure shock etched into her face. "No," she murmured. "This isn't possible." She marched toward Amarachi, shoving past a few people. The crowd parted instinctively, sensing a confrontation. "So it's true," Ngozi said, stopping in front of her. "That's the face you were hiding?" Amarachi met her gaze, calm and steady. "Yes. So all of this, the drama, the act, the poor me performance, it was all to hide the fact that you're beautiful?" "No. It was to protect all of you, but nobody wanted to listen." "You're just a manipulator," Ngozi shouted. "You played the victim, acted like you were special to get attention. I should have known. You just wanted to be a star." "A star?" Amarachi let out a quiet smile. "Ngozi, have you looked in the mirror today? Not your makeup mirror, the real one. You flaunt yourself to be noticed. Buy drinks for guys who don't even remember your name. You hide behind designer clothes and sharp words. But in the end, you're just a scared girl afraid of being forgotten," the crowd murmured. Someone let out an "Oof!" "Shut up!" Ngozi snapped, but her voice wavered. "No," Amarachi said, her voice clear as a bell. I won't shut up. You spent months trying to humiliate me, called me a monster, laughed with your little crew, but now that you see what I was hiding, you're the one losing it. Ngozi took a step back. Maybe the problem was never me. Maybe it's always been you. Your insecurity, your jealousy, your fear of not being the center of everything. You don't know anything about my life, Ngozi yelled, her voice breaking. I know enough. I know you've been here for 5 years and still haven't graduated. I know you exchange tests for favors. I know you fake a life you don't actually live. Silence fell over the courtyard. Ngozi stopped breathing for a second. Her eyes widened. Some of her so-called friends slowly stepped away. Amarachi stepped a bit closer. So now what, Ngozi? What will you tell everyone? That the monster was just a girl trying to protect people? That you lost a man who was never yours to someone who never wanted to compete? Ngozi stepped back. Her eyes filled with tears. Her lips trembled. You'll regret this. No. I'd only regret never showing who I really am, never stopping the hiding. Ngozi turned and ran, pushing through the crowd, fleeing the laughter, the cameras, the eyes that no longer feared her. Amarachi stood still for a moment. The students around her began to clap. You're so brave, someone yelled. Beautiful and fearless, said another. She didn't say a word, just smiled and walked toward the main building. At the graduation ceremony days later, Amarachi looked radiant. She wore a simple wine-colored dress, her hair gently pinned up, and a pair of earrings her mother had given her. But what stood out the most was her face, finally free, alive, unafraid. Obinna walked beside her, hand in hand. He wore a grey suit and looked at her like no one else existed in the room. I never thought I'd live to see this day, she said, emotional. You deserved it from the start. The world just needed to be ready. Or maybe I did. The ceremony began. Names were called. Each graduate walked across the stage and received their diploma to waves of applause. When the name Amarachi Okiki was announced, the entire room rose to its feet. Applause thundered through the hall for several long seconds. She climbed the steps with poise, received her diploma with a soft smile, walked back down with grace. Later, outside the hall, Mama Nkichi and Papa Emeka were waiting, their eyes brimming with tears. My daughter, her mother said, hugging her tightly. You did it. We did it, Mama. On the other side of campus, sitting alone on a dark bench, was Ngozi. She wore plain clothes, no makeup. Her eyes were downcast, silent. Her glory had faded. Her friends had vanished. Her pride had crumbled. From a distance, she watched Amarachi pass by. For a moment, their eyes met. Amarachi paused, thought about looking away, but chose differently. I hope you find your peace, Ngozi, she said softly before walking on. Obinna waited at the exit. Amarachi walked to him with light steps. The wind lifted her hair, and she smiled. For the first time in years, the world felt light, free of the weight, free of the guilt, free of the fear. She was Amarachi, whole, alive, and finally, seen.